There's been a lot of talk lately about the possibility of abolishing federal income taxes on Social Security benefits. Now, most states have already done away with taxing Social Security benefits, but not the federal government. So in this video, what we're going to do is we're going to look at why the government began taxing Social Security benefits back in 1983 and what will happen if that law is abolished. All right, I want to begin by just giving you a little bit of the history behind the legislation that brought about the taxation of Social Security benefits. Now, you'll notice here from 1935 to 1983, which is almost 50 years, Social Security benefits, the income that we receive from the Social Security system, was actually totally excluded. Notice from federal income taxes. So for 48 years, as you drew those benefits, you didn't have to pay income taxes on that whatsoever. But again, everything changed then in 1983, and let me show you why. We had the passing of the Social Security Act of 1983, and at that particular point in time, President Ronald Reagan, of course, was the president of our country. And then this is actually Alan Greenspan, who was the Federal Reserve Chairman. Actually was Federal Reserve Chairman for many years, but during the time of Reagan, he was the one that then Reagan would appoint to make some changes to the Social Security system. And so we call that the Greenspan Commission. And their job really was twofold. Number one, their desire was to strengthen the Social Security Trust Fund. People are living longer, drawing greater benefits, and so they saw the need to really make sure Social Security was going to have long-term benefits that they would strengthen that. So they began to do so with this legislation. The second goal, very interesting, was to do this, to make taxation on retirement benefits more consistent. And so they said there's an inconsistency because the way that private pension income is taxed is different than Social Security. They're both retirement, but taxed differently. So again, their goal is to make that more consistent. So let me kind of show you this next slide to illustrate what their thinking was at the time. And so, of course, we had private pensions, very common back then, and of course, not so common today. But what was happening with the private pension is certainly the employee, the worker, was putting money into that pension, for future withdrawals, but also the employer was putting money in. Now, within the pension, of course, there were investments here, so there were earnings and gains from that pension plan. And then when someone retired and they began to take money out, what was coming out was anything that the employee put in, that was going to come out tax-free. But the gains and the employer contributions was going to be subject to taxes. That was a portion then of that income now taxable. And they're saying that's what we ought to be doing with Social Security benefits as well. Okay, now prior to 1983, here's exactly what Social Security looked like. Employee puts in, employer puts in into the Social Security system. Now, right now, that percentage, the employee puts in 6.20, employer matches that 6.20. If you're self-employed, you pay the full 12.40 up to the max. This year, in 2025, that max is $176,100. So after we've met that max, then we don't have to pay any more Social Security taxes. Okay, so money goes in. And then when we retire and we start taking our Social Security benefits, we take distributions. What happened before 1983, notice, everything coming out is going to be tax-free. And they're saying that doesn't make sense because up here, money's coming out, it's taxable, but now here it's all tax-free. So that's what they wanted to change. Again, their goal was to make this more consistent, so you can see what happens. So instead of it coming out totally tax-free, a portion of those benefits are now going to be subject to taxes with the passing of this law. Now, I'm going to share those details with you, but just before we get there, there's a lot of you that are considering Medicare or maybe already be on Medicare. And we think it's very important to really have an understanding of the decisions that you make about Medicare. And so if you want to stay up to date on what's going on with Medicare, because I do a lot of videos about Medicare for sure, but we would encourage you just to click below and subscribe to become a subscriber to our channel, because every time I do a new video, which is usually 1 or 2 a week, you'll be notified of that new video content. And again, it's all free. And we'd also appreciate if you give us a thumbs up, because what that happens in is that tells YouTube that you enjoy the video. Others like you may also enjoy that video. So we'd love you to do that. Also, awesome. Leave a comment. We love to know what people think about the videos, and if there's something that you would like me to do a video on. We read those comments to see other content things that may be interesting to you. So again, we'd love for you to be a subscriber, no cost whatsoever, so you can stay up with Medicare. Okay, let's get back to Social Security now. As we talk about this particular act, we said that they were trying to make taxation of retirement benefits more consistent. All right, so how did they even come up with this idea that they need to make changes? Here's why. Here's some of the kind of the driving thoughts behind all of this legislation. That's this, that most people receive far more in Social Security benefits than they contributed. Now, most people don't realize that, but it's true. Now, if someone were to die young or early, had not made it to the place where they could draw Social Security benefits, obviously that would not be the case. But with the average life expectancy today of a man of 83 and a lady of 85, what's happening is people are receiving far more out than they ever put in. All right, so that was one of the main thoughts behind this. Then also, the benefits are based upon earnings history, not taxes paid in. So when they actually calculate how much we're going to pull out, they take our top 35 years of earnings, they apply a wage index to that, they divide that by 420 months, and that comes up with which is called your average index monthly earnings. They apply bin points to that, which then they come up with what's called our primary insurance amount. And that primary insurance amount is what we get at full retirement age. And it has nothing to do with truly what we paid in. Now, clearly people who are high income have paid more in, but the equation for that has nothing to do with taxes paid, has everything to do with our lifetime earnings. And so the point is they're looking at these two things and say, if we'll consider these two facts, then we can come up with a way to make the taxation process more fair. All right. Now, by the way, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with this. I'm just saying when you go back and read about the legislation and they're thinking how this passed Congress, these are the true driving thoughts behind it. So as they began to see the distributions coming out for Social Security income, here's what they arrived at. Again, employee pays in, employer is going to do the match. And then as people actually draw their benefits over their lifetime, what was happening is the money that's coming out is only equal to about 15% of what they put in. So 85% of those Social Security benefits are coming from other sources. What? That would be employer contributions. It would be the interest that was earned on the Social Security Trust Fund. Okay, plus, again, people living a long period of time, 85%. So what they're saying, because of that, they want to take a portion of these benefits and make them subject then to federal income taxes, again, to be consistent with how taxes work on private pensions. All right, so let me show you how they arrived at that portion that now will be taxable. They have a particular formula that we follow that started back then and, of course, still is in existence today. So the exact 1983 formula for taxing Social Security benefits worked this way. They have what they call combined income. Now, combined income also, when you read about this, is referred to as provisional income. So these are synonymous, mean the same thing. You just, as you read about this, you'll see these being interchanged. So that's one factor of this calculation was combined income. And then exclusionary thresholds, which meant not all of our Social Security benefits will be subject to income taxes. A portion of them will. So they set these thresholds. If we're below the threshold, then we wouldn't have to pay any taxes on our Social Security benefits. So we'll talk specifically about these thresholds. All right. So when it comes to combined income, here's the way we arrive at that number. We have AGI, which is line 11 on your tax return, plus tax-exempt interest. Now, a lot of people don't have this, but if you do, that is actually reported on line 2A. This would be municipal bonds, different types of bond interest that's excluded from federal income taxes, municipal bonds, some U.S. savings bonds. So we don't pay taxes on that, but we still have to report that on our 1040. And then whatever 50% of our Social Security benefit is. Now, again, there's some people that are getting as high as $4,000 a month, but the average right now is right at $2,000. For the sake of the video, just going to use the average. So right now, the average person is getting about $24,000 a year in Social Security benefits. So what we have to do to have provisional income is we have to have 50% of that. So that would be plus $12,000 in this example. So whatever line 11 said plus line 2A, and then that would then equal our combined or provisional income. All right, and so we'll look at some exact examples on that, but I'll make sure you understand the formula. Now, I'm going to show you from a 1040 form exactly what lines we're looking at. Okay, so we know we had line 2A, which is tax-exempt interest. Again, that's where we would write that number in. And then we have line 11, and this is going to be your adjusted gross income. Okay, and so we're looking at line 2A plus line 11, and then we add back in half of whatever our Social Security benefits are. That's going to give us that provisional income number. Okay, then we take that number and we apply that to the exclusionary thresholds. So let me show you those. Now, there's a couple factors with the exclusionary thresholds. Number one, what we're arriving at is that portion of the Social Security benefits that will now be taxable. Okay, that's what we're trying to get to. And we're going to have exclusionary thresholds for single filers as well as married filing a joint return. That's what I'm going to show you here. Now, they also have one that's married filing a separate return. It's actually all that income would be subject to federal income taxes, your Social Security income. And they have one for head of household. So there's a couple different ones, but the majority of people are going to be single or married filing a joint return. Okay, and so we have different thresholds for these numbers. All right, so let's look at these exclusionary thresholds. Again, this is what happened in 1983 and then would stay in existence for another 10 years, these exact numbers. So if I'm a single filer and I'm at $25,000 provisional income, right, AGI plus tax-exempt interest plus half of my Social Security benefits, if that total is going to be below $25,000, then zero of my Social Security income is going to be subject to taxes. If I'm above that, then what happens? Then 50% of my Social Security income is going to be subject to federal income taxes. All right, and so it's above anything in here. So again, everyone that had Social Security, even if they're real high income, still half of theirs would not have been subject to taxes. When it comes to married filing a joint return, what happens? We have $32,000 or below would be, again, zero. Would I pay any income taxes on your Social Security income, but above that then would be 50%. All right, so a little bit higher than for married filing a joint return. All right, and this is the way it was for 10 years. And then in 1993, that changed. And it changed because of the passing of the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. Now, there was a lot of things that were affected by that particular legislation, but how it affected Social Security specifically was they added another exclusion threshold, meaning people that are high income are going to pay more of their Social Security income is now going to be subject to those federal income taxes. All right, so we added a bracket. So we go back to the original bracket, which is $25,000 or less. Social Security income was not going to be subject to taxes. And then what they did is they added another bracket here. So anyone between 25 and 34, remember what this is. That's that provisional income. Line 11, adjusted gross, plus 2A, tax-exempt interest, plus 50% of your Social Security benefits. Whatever that total is, we plug it into here. And if I'm between 25 and 34, now 50% of my Social Security income is subject to taxes. And if I'm above that, now 85% will be now taxable. When it comes to married filers, again, 32,000, this stayed the same. And then they put this threshold here of 44,000. Anyone between here, 50% of that Social Security would be subject to taxes, and above that now 85%. So with that passing, now what happened? Now we have another higher bracket. Now what I'm going to do is give you some real life examples, but I just want to say one more quick thing about Medicare. If you would like, there's a lot of people that sometimes are confused about Medicare, just like Social Security can be confusing, so can Medicare. But if you're approaching Medicare eligibility or maybe already on Medicare and just wondering if you have the right plan for you, what we did, we put together a quiz, just a handful of questions here. And what it'll do is it'll actually test your knowledge to see if you have the proper understanding about Medicare as you are ready to go on it, or if you're already on it, are you making sure that you're really on the right plan? Because the whole key going on Medicare is make sure you're not making any mistakes. And we found that this quiz is very helpful. Take the quiz, test your knowledge, and of course, all you have to do is click the link below and you can take that quiz. All right, now what I'm going to do is give you some real life examples of what is happening right now at 2025, and then what would happen if indeed they abolished federal income taxes on our Social Security benefits. Just a couple quick examples. So first off, that's our formula for provisional income. And again, what we're going to do here, we're going to say that someone is earning the average Social Security benefit, which is $24,000 a year. And we have to find their provisional income. Remember, that's our main number here. And how we're going to do that, so let's use an example. Let's say that we have a gentleman that has an AGI, and his wife have an AGI adjusted gross income of $30,000 a year. That could be investment income, rental income, those kinds of things. And let's say they don't have any tax-exempt interest, so we'll say there's nothing on line 2A, but he is, and she's not receiving Social Security yet, but he is receiving $24,000. And so that would give us $12,000 added to our $30,000, and so that's going to give us a provisional income number of $42,000. Again, this is a married couple that files a joint return. We go to the chart, and you can see that they're between 32 and 44. So that means that 50% of his Social Security benefit is actually going to be subject to income taxes. So let's just say they happen to be in let's call it the 12% tax bracket. Okay, and so if we have $12,000, that is on the line. And by the way, let me just show you where this is real quick and maybe you can see it. This is over here where it says Social Security line 6B. 6B, that's where it is. And it says taxable amount. So you have some Social Security benefits that are not taxable. That would be half of his, which is 12, but the other half is subject to these income taxes. So it's actually reported on line 6B. All right, so let's go back. And so we have someone that has $12,000 that was on line B because it's still subject to taxes. We're saying they're in the 12% tax bracket. So let's take that $12,000 and 12% of that. And so they're having to pay $1,440 of income taxes, again, at that particular tax bracket on their Social Security income. So if the federal government abolished making this income subject to taxes, what's going to happen? They just picked up $1,440. And because it no longer has to be reported on that line, it also may lower them in a tax bracket. Okay, so that's one example. Okay, now let me give you a second example. So let's go back to this original one. We said they had $30,000 in his investment income, maybe some rental income, but let's say his wife is still working, and let's say she makes $60,000 a year. So we have $60,000 a year of her income. So now we're at $90,000 AGI. Again, we'll say they have no tax-exempt interest. But again, he's drawing $24,000. She's not taking Social Security yet. So to get our provisional income, we have to add that $12,000. So we have 90 plus 12. And so that's going to put us at what? $102,000. Well, that is in this bracket here because we're above the 44. So that means 85% of his Social Security income is now subject to taxes. So again, he's getting 24 grand. So we take the 24,000, 85% of that is taxable. So now his taxable income just for Social Security purposes is $20,400. And again, that's what's going to be on that line 6B. Taxable amount will be $20,400. And so let's say they're in the 22% tax bracket. In this illustration, $20,400, 22% taxes. So that's equal to $4,488 that he had to pay in income taxes on his Social Security income. So again, if the law is abolished, what happens? That goes away. And again, the possibility of maybe even moving down to a lower tax bracket. Let's look at just one more quick example. All right, let's look at the example of someone that's single. Let's say they didn't have a lot of investments and they just had a small private pension, and let's just say they get $1,000 a month on that pension. So we know that's going to give them $12,000 a year AGI. They have no tax-exempt interest. And again, let's say they're making $24,000. Again, that's the average. So we take 50% of that, and we have their $12,000 AGI, plus another $12,000 then for half of their Social Security benefits. So the number we're looking at is $24,000. And again, they're single. Provisional income chart. So what happens? Well, we're below $25,000. So zero of that Social Security income is going to be subject to taxes. It's totally tax-free. And again, so if the law was abolished, nothing's going to change for them because they were already below that particular threshold. All right, so again, we don't know if these laws are going to be abolished, but you can see it could be a substantial savings, not only not having to pay taxes on that Social Security income, but also could change tax brackets as well.